diamonds.
Holy crap.
One of the alleged kidnappers was a man named Mike Atoll, who later owned the El Dorado Club and the Flamingo in Las Vegas.
That's what he did with the diamond money.
Yeah, so there's that. Herman Pastor, the other guy involved, had a background of one time being picked up in Milwaukee for running a confidence game, being a con man. And apparently he was using the name Herman Pastoro to sound more Italian. At the time that he was arrested, 2 fingers on his right hand were bandaged. Don't know exactly why, but ultimately those charges were dropped. He was then picked up a little bit later for grand theft, but that case was also dropped. So these are the guys he's got working for him. Yeah.
And they all have the same system. For some reason, none of them can get thrown in jail. It's not possible.
Yes. So Mayflower, their company, ends up getting the Wurlitzer distribution contract from Minnesota and the Dakotas. For people who do not know, Wurlitzer was a major jukebox company. The general sales manager told the press, the general sales manager of Wurlitzer, "I know a few firms so well equipped to serve Wurlitzer music merchants. Mayflower understands the problems of operators and knows how to solve them. I am sure that Sam Tarrant, Herman Pastor, and Morris Reusner will go all out to render a superior quality of service as Wurlitzer distributors." So high praise from these guys. While they seemingly run a legitimate jukebox company, they're also being investigated for moving hijacked liquor in and out of their warehouse space. So they get in some trouble for that. And then they end up bringing it across state lines into Idaho, of all places, from Minnesota to Idaho. And they're doing this apparently to work around some of the tax stamp laws. I don't know. I don't know the details of how liquor is taxed. But apparently they're bringing it to Minnesota and then bringing it over to Idaho from there to avoid whatever the normal way is you're supposed to do it.
Interesting.
And the taxes on this must be high enough that it's worthwhile to run it that way. So, I don't know. So they're doing that. They're heavily investigated for this, but don't ever seem to get in a lot of trouble for it.
Of course.
If things aren't really proven or what. By 1945, Herman Pastor buys out Sam Tarrant. So Herman Pastor, who wanted to start the business originally, now actually has the business. He takes over Mayflower Distributing. Tarrant then moves to Miami and starts his own jukebox business there. So there's now 2 different businesses.
You did some massive searching for this.
Oh, heck yeah.
Because, wow, now we're going all the way down to Miami, or are we just kind of ending that character that he's in Miami?
We'll see where this goes. We'll see where this goes.
I'm giving up.
No, you're good. You're good. So, Alan Nilva, there was already a Jacob Nilva. Now there's an Alan Nilva. These are both brother-in-laws of Herman Pastor. Alan Nilva was an attorney. He suspended his private practice to become the full-time employee and attorney for Mayflower Distributing. I don't know why a jukebox company is a full-time attorney, but
well, you're seeing how often these people are getting arrested, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, they need a full-time attorney.
Yeah. And then also, but along with this, Herman Pastor branches out and gets involved in a lot of real estate. And we're not really going to talk about that in this episode, but later on, like, he ends up becoming a major real estate player in the Minneapolis area. He owns like shopping centers like that. So the real estate business is probably really where the money ends up coming from. According to author Gus Russo, the Wurlitzer Company held a meeting in Minnesota in June 1947 for the purpose of dividing up territory. Many of those attending had mob ties. For example, Sam Tarrant was there, who is suspected of having mob ties. He ends up getting the Florida franchise, not surprisingly, because he lives in Miami now. Interestingly, during the meeting, he shared a cabin with Frank Garnett, who was the son-in-law of Chicago mobster Jake Guzik. Now, none of this matters, but Jake Guzik was like a major mob guy under Al Capone. Mm-hmm. He had the nickname Greasy Thumb because apparently his thumbs would get so greasy from counting all the money. So, very well-known mob figure. 1948, Sam Tarrant is granted the AMI franchise. AMI, another company and a kind of competitor to Wurlitzer. The AMI franchise for both Florida and Cuba. He opens a second office in Havana so he could oversee his Cuba operations. It grows to the point where he also ends up getting parts of Georgia and Puerto Rico. So he's doing pretty well, doing pretty good. April 1949, the FBI suspects that Herman Pastor is involved in an illegal lottery. Don't know where this comes from. So they put a mail cover on him. And a mail cover is when they contact a local post office and they ask the post office to make note of all the mail that comes and goes from the resident. They don't open it. They don't do anything like that. But they just make note of which addresses things are being sent to or sent.
Do you know, can they still do this today?
I'm pretty sure they can.
Really?
Yeah.
It's good to know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because they're not actually opening it. They're just seeing what anybody could see.
Mm-hmm.
And really, there's nothing, they don't find anything very suspicious. Mostly what they find is letters going back and forth between Herman Pastor and Sam Tarrant in Miami, which you would expect. And then correspondence back and forth between his multiple offices. At this point, Herman Pastor has also expanded to have a jukebox distribution office in Milwaukee. So there's some Milwaukee link there.
So he lied. He didn't say we were going to have a Milwaukee tie until the later episodes. We got our first Milwaukee song.
Okay. A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. Sam Tarrant tries to expand out of jukeboxes. And by November 1950, probably earlier, but that's what I know for sure, he ends up purchasing a company called Treeha Golf Clubs, which is a company that made affordable golf clubs. And the way they made them affordable was they had interchangeable heads on the golf clubs.
So you only had one club and you just changed the head on all of them?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, so the idea being, instead of having a whole golf bag full of clubs, you only needed, a couple shafts, and then you could just screw on the ones
The proper head for
with
it.
the proper head. So that you could sell them fairly cheap, and then people could play golf, because golf was kind of an expensive game, and it still isn't. So that was the way around that. Whether they were really good or not, I have no idea. But they seem to do all right. Also in 1950, we know that on top of jukeboxes, they're now moving slot machines from Miami into Cuba. So we don't know how long they've been doing it, but definitely by 1950, they're not just distributing jukeboxes, they're distributing slot machines. Cuba actually intercepts them and tries to send them back. Cuba doesn't want the slot machine. So whoever their customers are sending them to, a lot of them get sent back. And the U.S. authorities stop them at the border because they're slot machines. But apparently they're set up in such a way that they're actually legal. And the person on the receiving end has to do some modification to make them illegal. So I don't know what that is, but
I wonder if they had it modified that it would pay out money or something, so it technically was legal.
Yeah, I think this is, I'm speculating here, but I'm guessing this is similar to like how certain firearms can potentially be illegal, but if you sell them in pieces, then you can rebuild them to the way that you're not supposed to. I'm guessing it's similar to that, where whatever they're shipping is legal, but once you get the parts or the modifications, then it goes back to being a slot machine.
Right. I'm a little surprised that.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I guess I would.
Have you forgotten the episodes where it was illegal to have pinball?
Oh, okay, yeah.
I mean, this is back when gambling was a big deal.
Yeah, I guess I just would have thought that machines weren't legal. It was active.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Just me being sorry.
No, not at all. Not at all. Around 1953, I think, I wasn't 100% on this date, a man running an illegal lottery in Tampa is shotgunned to death. While I don't think that the murder itself had any real connection to the rest of the story, when the police showed up, they found an envelope in the backseat of that man's car, and it had Sammy Tarrant's name on the envelope. Inside of the envelope was a $1 bill. Yeah, very weird. So, I don't know. So he was looked into a little bit for that. Like I said, I don't think there's any real connection between him and the murder. But police did find that Tarrant was close with a few mobsters in the area, including a man named Joe Indelicato, who was known as Scooch, and Stefano Rendazzo. So those names mean nothing to me, but apparently they were known mob guys. Sam Tarrant is now suspected of being involved in bankruptcy fraud. So he gets looked into for that. Long story short, nothing happens.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, I go into that a little bit more in my notes, so that'll be online. But yeah, really nothing happens there. They go in and they like investigate all his paperwork. They think like he's scamming the whole golf club business he's doing, but Apparently, that is not the case, or at least he does